The diner sat off Highway 40, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Faded paint on the outside, a neon sign that flickered even during the day. Inside, it smelled like decades of coffee and grease, the kind of smell that clung to the vinyl booths and wouldn't leave no matter how many times they wiped down the tables. It was mid-afternoon. The lunch rush had passed. Only a handful of people remained scattered throughout the dining area. A truck driver sat at the counter, finishing a slice of pie. An elderly couple shared a booth near the window, speaking in low voices. A woman typed on a laptop in the corner, earbuds in, oblivious to everything around her. Steven Seagal sat alone in a booth near the back. He'd chosen it deliberately, the way someone does when they want a quiet moment away from the world. His jacket hung on the hook beside him, plain, dark, nothing flashy. His jeans were worn but clean. His hair was pulled back simply. In front of him, a white ceramic plate held scrambled eggs, toast, and a few strips of bacon. A mug of black coffee sat steaming beside it. He ate slowly, methodically. No rush, no distraction, no phone on the table. Just a man eating a meal. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a kind smile, walked past his table. She held a coffee pot in one hand. "Top you off?" she asked. Steven looked up and nodded. "Please." She poured without spilling. A drop, smiled briefly, and moved on to the next table. Steven added nothing to the coffee. No sugar, no cream. He lifted the mug, took a sip, and set it back down gently. Outside, the parking lot was quiet. A few cars scattered here and there. An old pickup truck near the entrance. A sedan with out-of-state plates. A motorcycle parked under the shade of a tree. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would catch anyone's attention. Inside, the hum of the refrigerator, mixed with the low murmur of conversation. Silverware clinked against plates. The coffee machine hissed in the background. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead, barely moving the warm air. Steven cut a piece of toast, dragged it through the eggs, and took a bite. He chewed slowly, staring out the window at nothing in particular. His expression was neutral. Calm. The face of someone completely at peace with being alone. Then, through the window, a black and white patrol car rolled into the parking lot. Steven didn't look up. Not yet. The patrol car moved slowly through the parking lot, tires crunching over. Gravel. It wasn't rushing, wasn't responding to a call, just cruising, observing. Two officers sat inside. The driver was younger, maybe late 20s, with a fresh haircut and a uniform that still looked new. His partner was older, early 40s, with the kind of weathered face that came from years on the job. They talked casually as they drove, eyes scanning license plates, checking mirrors, looking for anything out of place. The younger officer pointed toward the diner. "Want to grab something?" The older one shrugged. "Yeah, why not?" They pulled into a spot near the entrance, the car facing outward like cops always parked. Force of habit, always ready to leave quickly. The engine cut off. For a moment they sat there, finishing their conversation. The younger officer laughed at something. The older one checked his phone briefly, then put it away. They opened their doors at the same time and stepped out. The sound of the car doors closing echoed across the quiet lot. Both officers adjusted their belts instinctively. Radios, handcuffs, batons, everything in place. Before heading toward the entrance, they paused. The older officer's eyes swept across the parking lot one more time. Old habits. He looked at the pickup truck, glanced at the sedan. His gaze lingered on the motorcycle for a second, then moved on. Then he looked through the diner window. His eyes moved from table to table. The truck driver at the counter, the elderly couple, the woman with the laptop. Then he stopped. His focus settled on the booth near the back, on Steven. The younger officer noticed. "What?" The older officer didn't answer immediately. He just kept looking. Steven sat alone, eating quietly, minding his own business. Nothing aggressive, nothing threatening. Just a man having a meal. But something about it caught the officer's attention. "Guy in the back," the older officer said quietly. The younger one looked through the window. "What about him?" "Just keep an eye on him." They walked toward the entrance. The younger officer pulled the door open. The small bell above it chimed, a cheerful sound that didn't match the shift in energy. Inside, a few people glanced up out of habit, saw the uniforms. Most went back to what they were doing. Cops coming into a diner wasn't unusual, but the officers didn't head to the counter. They didn't sit down. They stood just inside the doorway, scanning the room more deliberately now. The waitress noticed. She walked over with a welcoming smile. "Afternoon, officers. Just you two today?" The older officer nodded but didn't smile back. "Yeah, we'll sit in a minute." She sensed the tone and her smile faded slightly. "Sure, just let me know." She stepped back toward the kitchen, but she watched them from the corner of her eye. The officers moved slowly through the diner, not walking directly toward Steven but angling in his direction. Casual, like they were just looking for a good spot to sit, but their eyes kept drifting back to him. Steven took another bite of toast. Sipped his coffee. He still hadn't looked up. The truck driver at the counter noticed the officers now. He set his fork down, watching. The elderly couple exchanged a glance. The woman with the laptop pulled out one earbud, sensing something was off. The younger officer leaned toward his partner and spoke quietly. "You really think there's something?" The older officer's jaw tightened. "I don't know, but I'm not ignoring my gut." They stopped a few feet from Steven's table, close enough to be noticed, close enough to make their presence known. The older officer cleared his throat. Steven finished chewing, swallowed, set his fork down carefully. Then, slowly, he looked up. His eyes met the officer's. Calm, steady. No fear, no guilt. Just a man, waiting to hear what they wanted. The older officer straightened his posture. His hand rested on his belt, fingers near his radio. "Excuse me, sir," he said. His voice was polite, but firm. "Official. We're going to need to see some identification." The diner went quieter. Steven didn't move immediately. He just looked at the officer, his expression unchanged. Calm, patient, like he'd been through this before. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly in the now silent diner. The older officer's eyes narrowed slightly. "I asked you a question, sir. I need to see your ID." The younger officer shifted his weight, positioning himself slightly to the side. Not aggressive, but tactical, covering angles. His hand drifted closer to his belt. Steven set his coffee mug down slowly. "I'm just having breakfast," he said. "Is there a reason you need my identification?" The older officer's jaw tightened. "Sir, I don't need to explain myself. When an officer asks for ID, you provide it. It's that simple." People were watching. Now. The truck driver at the counter had stopped eating entirely. The elderly couple sat frozen, forks hovering over their plates. The woman with the laptop had closed it, both earbuds out now, phone in her hand. The waitress stood near the kitchen entrance, wringing a dishcloth between her hands. She'd seen confrontations before, but something about this one felt different. Heavier. Steven leaned back slightly in the booth. Not defensive, not aggressive, just creating a little space. "I understand you have a job to do," he said evenly, "but I'd like to know what I'm being stopped for." The younger officer spoke up now, his tone sharper. "We don't need a reason. We're, conducting a routine check. Now, are you going to cooperate? Or are we going to have a problem?" The word problem hung in the air. Steven's expression didn't change. No anger, no fear. Just that same steady calm. "I'm not trying to create a problem. he said. "I'm asking a question." The older officer took a step closer to the table. "Sir, this is your last warning. Show me your ID right now, or we're going to assume you have something to hide." A woman 2 booths away whispered to her companion. "This doesn't seem right." Her companion whispered back. "Should we say something?" She hesitated. "I don't know. They're cops." The teenager near the window had his phone out now, recording. Not obviously, just angled low near the table. His hands were shaking slightly, but he kept filming. Steven reached toward his jacket slowly. Both officers tensed immediately. The younger one's hand moved to his holster, fingers brushing the grip of his weapon. "Easy," the older officer barked. "Slow movements." Steven paused, hands visible. "I'm reaching for my wallet," he said calmly. "It's in my jacket pocket, that's all." "Do it slowly," the older officer ordered. Steven moved with deliberate care. His hand slid into his jacket pocket. Every movement was measured, controlled. He pulled out a worn leather wallet and held it up so both officers could see it clearly. "Setting it on the table," Steven said. He placed the wallet down gently. The older officer reached forward and picked it up without asking. He flipped it open, eyes scanning the contents. Credit cards, some cash. Then he found the driver's license tucked into a clear sleeve. He pulled it out. His eyes went to the photo. First, then the name. His expression shifted, just slightly. A flicker of recognition. Confusion. He blinked, read the name again. Slower this time. The younger officer noticed. "What is it?" he asked quietly. The older officer didn't answer. He just stared at the license. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He turned the ID toward his partner without a word. The younger officer leaned in. His eyes landed on the name. He froze. Complete silence filled the diner. Not a single fork moved. Not a single word spoken. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the slow turn of the ceiling fan. The truck driver whispered under his breath. "What's going on?" The elderly man squinted, trying to see. "Can't tell from here." The teenager kept recording. His phone captured everything. The officers' faces, the frozen moment, the realization spreading across their features. The older officer's hand holding the license trembled slightly. He looked from the ID to Steven's face, back to the ID, back to Steven. "Mr. He started, his voice quieter now, almost uncertain. "Mr. Seagal." The name rippled through the diner like a shockwave. Someone gasped. The waitress covered her mouth. The woman with the laptop whispered, "No way." Steven sat perfectly still, watching the officers, waiting. The younger officer swallowed hard. "Steven Seagal?" he said, almost to himself. "Like the Steven Seagal?" The older officer said nothing. He just stood there, the license still in his hand, his face flushed red. The silence lasted only a few seconds, but it felt longer. The kind of silence that makes people hold their breath without realizing it. Then the whispers started. "Did he just say Steven Seagal? No way. That can't be real. Look at him, that's definitely him." The truck driver at the counter leaned toward the person next to him, a middle-aged woman picking at a salad. "You hearing this?" he whispered. She nodded, eyes wide. "I heard." "Steven Seagal," the truck driver repeated, shaking his head in disbelief. "They just stopped Steven Seagal." The elderly couple hadn't moved. The husband's fork was still suspended in midair, a piece of pancake stuck to the end. His wife gripped his arm. "Harold," she whispered. "Did you hear that?" Harold set his fork down slowly. "I heard." "What are they going to do?" He didn't answer. He just watched. The woman with the laptop had pulled her phone out now too. Not recording yet, but holding it. Ready. Her finger hovered over the camera. App. She glanced around, noticing the teenager already filming. She hesitated, then opened her camera anyway. 2 more phones came out. A man in a booth near the restrooms. A young couple sharing fries by the window. Everyone trying to be subtle. Everyone failing. The waitress stood frozen near the kitchen, the dishcloth still twisted in her hands. She wanted to move, to do something, but she didn't know what. Intervene? Walk away? Pretend nothing was happening? Her hands tightened around the cloth. The older officer still held Steven's license. His face had gone from confident to confused to something else entirely. Embarrassment. Maybe fear. He looked at his partner, then back at Steven. The younger officer's hand had dropped from his holster. His posture had changed completely. No longer tactical, no longer commanding. He looked like a kid who'd just been caught doing something he shouldn't. Steven sat calmly, waiting. His hands rested on the table, visible, relaxed. He didn't speak, didn't push, didn't gloat. He just let the moment sit there. The truck driver whispered again. "What do you think they're gonna say?" The woman beside him shrugged. "What can they say? They could apologize. Should have thought of that before they came over here." At the booth near the restrooms, the man recording muttered under his breath, "This is insane. They profiled him. That's what this is." His companion, a woman in scrubs who looked like she'd just gotten off a hospital shift, nodded grimly. "Happens. Every day. Just not usually to someone famous." "Think it'll make a difference?" She glanced at the officers, then back at her phone. "We'll see." The teenager by the window was sweating now. His phone felt heavy in his hands. He'd never filmed anything like this before. Part of him wanted to stop, to put the phone away and pretend he wasn't involved. But another part of him knew this mattered. He kept recording. The elderly wife leaned closer to her husband. "Should we say something?" "Like what?" Harold whispered. "Back. I don't know. That this isn't right?" Harold looked at the officers. 2 armed men, authority figures. Then he looked at Steven, calm and unbothered. "I don't think he needs us to say anything," Harold murmured. His wife frowned but didn't argue. Near the kitchen, the waitress finally moved. She stepped closer to the cook, an older man who'd been watching through the service window. "What do we do?" she whispered. The cook shook his head. "Nothing. Stay out of it." "But stay out of it," he repeated firmly. "Let them handle it." She didn't like that answer, but she didn't have a better one. Back at Steven's table, the older officer finally found his voice. It came out quieter than before. "Uncertain. Mr. Seagal," he said again. We didn't realize." Steven's expression didn't change. "Realize what?" The officer opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the license again like he needed to confirm what he was seeing. The younger officer cleared his throat. "Sir, we had reports of..." "Reports of what?" Steven interrupted gently, not aggressive, just direct. The younger officer faltered. "Of suspicious activity in the area." "What kind of suspicious activity?" Silence. Steven waited. The diner waited. Phones kept recording. The older officer's hand trembled slightly as he held the license. There were reports of someone matching a description." "What description?" Steven asked. Another silence. The truck driver leaned toward the woman again. "They got nothing," he whispered. "They're making it up." She nodded. "I know." The woman in scrubs zoomed in slightly with her phone camera, making sure she captured the officers' faces. The uncertainty, the realization. The teenager's heart pounded. He could feel it in his chest, in his throat. This was real. This was actually happening. The young couple by the window had stopped eating entirely. Their fries sat cold and forgotten. They just watched, trying to process what they were seeing. A famous martial artist, sitting alone, eating breakfast. Stopped by police for no clear reason, and now everyone in the diner knew it. The older officer tried again. "Mr. Seagal, we're very sorry. We didn't mean any disrespect." Steven took a slow breath. "You asked for my ID. I gave it to you. Now what?" The officer swallowed hard. He looked at the license one more time, then extended it back toward Steven with an unsteady hand. That's all, sir. You're free to go back to your meal. Steven didn't take the license immediately. He just looked at it, then at the officer, then around the diner at all the people watching. Finally, he reached out and took the license back. The diner exhaled collectively, but Steven wasn't done yet. Steven took the license from the officer's hand slowly. He held it for a moment, looking at his own photo, his own name printed in plain letters. Then he slid it back into his wallet with the same careful precision he'd used for everything else. The older officer stepped back slightly, trying to regain some composure. Again, Mr. Seagal, we apologize for the interruption. We'll let you get back to your meal. Steven placed his wallet on the table but didn't put it away yet. Before you go, he said quietly, I have a question. Both officers stopped. The younger one glanced at his partner nervously. Of course, sir, the older officer said. Steven looked up at them. His expression was still calm, but there was something else now. Not anger, not bitterness, just clarity. What made me suspicious? He asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. The older officer shifted his weight. Sir, as I said, we had reports. What reports? Steven asked again, his voice still level. Specifically, what did the reports say? The officer's mouth opened, but no words came out immediately. He glanced at his partner. The younger officer looked away. There were concerns about individuals in the area. The older officer tried. What individuals? Silence. Steven leaned forward slightly. I've been sitting here for 20 minutes, eating scrambled eggs, drinking coffee. I haven't raised my voice, haven't made a scene, haven't done anything except exist in this space. The waitress near the kitchen nodded almost imperceptibly. So, I'll ask again, Steven continued. What made me suspicious? The truck driver whispered to the woman beside him. He's got them cornered. The elderly couple watched intently. Harold's hand found his wife's and squeezed. The woman in scrubs kept her phone steady, capturing every word. Have you ever been judged based on how you looked before anyone knew who you were? The older officer's face flushed deeper red. Mr. Seagal, with all due respect. I'm not asking for respect, Steven interrupted gently. I'm asking for an answer. The younger officer finally spoke up, his voice tight. Sir, we made a judgment call based on our training and experience. Steven nodded slowly. Your training told you a man sitting alone eating breakfast was a threat? No response. Your experience told you I needed to be questioned? The officer looked at his boots. Steven sat back again. I've been pulled over before, stopped before, asked for ID before, more times than I can count. His voice remained steady. And every time I wonder the same thing. Would this happen if I looked different? The diner was absolutely silent now. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed quieter. The older officer's shoulders sagged. Mr. Seagal, we apologize. We should have handled this differently. You should have had a reason, Steven said. An actual reason. Not an assumption. Not a feeling. A reason. The man recording near the restrooms whispered to his companion. He's teaching them right now. She nodded. And they know it. Steven picked up his coffee mug and took a sip. Cold now, but he drank it anyway. You know what the worst part is? He said after a moment. The officers waited. It's not that you stopped me. It's that this happens to people every single day who don't have a name you recognize. People who can't make you freeze when you see their ID. People who just have to accept it and move on. The waitress wiped at her eyes quickly. The truck driver nodded. Truth, he muttered. Steven set his mug down. So when you leave here today, I want you to think about that. Think about all the times you've made someone feel like a suspect just for existing. Think about whether your training is really what guided you, or whether it was something else. The older officer's voice cracked slightly. We will, sir. I promise you we will. Steven held his gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. He picked up his fork. The gesture was clear. The conversation was over. The officers stood there for another second, uncertain. Then the older one cleared his throat. "Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Seagal." Steven didn't respond. He just cut into his eggs. The officers turned and walked toward the exit. Every eye in the diner followed them. The bell above the door chimed as they left. Through the window, people watched them walk to their patrol car. They didn't speak to each other. They just got in, sat there for a moment, and then the older officer put his head in his hands. Inside the diner, nobody moved. The patrol car sat in the parking lot, engine off, both officers inside. Through the diner window, people could see them clearly. The older officer had both hands on the steering wheel, gripping it tightly. The younger one stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Inside the diner, Steven took another bite of his eggs. They were cold now, but he ate anyway. Methodical, calm, like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. The truck driver finally broke the silence. He stood up from his stool, walked over to Steven's booth, and stopped a respectful distance. "Away, sir," he said quietly. "I just wanted to say, what you did there, that took class." Steven looked up and nodded once. "I just asked questions." "You did more than that," the truck driver said. "You taught them something." He hesitated, then added, "Taught all of us something." Steven didn't respond immediately. He set his fork down and looked at the man, really looked at him. "What did you see when they came over here?" The truck driver shifted uncomfortably. "I saw two cops questioning someone." "And what did you do?" The man's face fell. I watched." "Exactly," Steven said softly, not accusatory, just factual. "You watched." The truck driver nodded slowly, the weight of it settling on him. "I should have said something." "Maybe," Steven said. "Or maybe you were scared. Maybe you thought it wasn't your place. Maybe you didn't want trouble." He paused. "But now you know what silence looks like. Remember that feeling next time." The truck driver swallowed hard. "I will." He extended his hand. Steven shook it firmly. Then the man walked back to the counter, his shoulders a little heavier than before. The elderly woman stood up next, nudging her husband. They approached together, moving slowly. "Young man," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "We're sorry we didn't speak up." Steven gestured to the booth across from him. "Please sit." They sat carefully. Harold kept his hands folded on the table. "We saw what happened," Harold said. "We knew it wasn't right, but we just sat there." "You're not alone in that," Steven said. "Most people do." The wife's eyes glistened. "My grandson, he's about your age. He's been stopped like that before, multiple times, and I never really understood what it felt like for him until just now." Steven's expression softened. "Then something good came from this." "Will you press charges?" Harold asked. "You'd have every right." Steven shook his head. "No, charges won't change how they think. That conversation we just had, that might, at least I hope it will." The couple sat with that for a moment, then stood. "Thank you for your grace," the wife said. Steven nodded as they returned to their booth. The waitress approached next, coffee pot in hand even though his cup was still full. She needed something to do with her hands. "Mr. Seagal," she started, her voice thick. "Your meal is absolutely on the house. I'm not taking no for an answer." Steven smiled slightly. "I appreciate that, but I'd rather pay and leave you a good tip." "Sir, please," he said gently. "Let me pay. I came here for a normal meal. Let me finish it normally." She nodded, tears spilling over. "Okay. But the tip better be small because I'm not keeping it. It's going to the local youth center." Steven's smile widened just a fraction. "Deal." She walked away, wiping her eyes with her apron. The woman in scrubs approached, phone still in her hand but no longer recording. "Mr. Seagal, I filmed what happened. Do you want me to delete it?" Steven considered this. "Did you film the truth?" "Yes, sir. Everything." "Then keep it," he said. But when you post it, don't just show the confrontation. Show what happened after. Show this. He gestured around the diner. Show people talking. Show people learning. Context matters. She nodded seriously. I will. I promise. As she walked away, the teenager by the window stayed in his seat, phone clutched in both hands. He wanted to approach but couldn't make himself move, Steven noticed. He caught the kid's eye and nodded toward the empty seat across from him. The teenager's eyes widened. He stood up shakily and walked over, sliding into the booth. You recorded too, Steven said. Not a question. The kid nodded. Yeah, I'm sorry. It felt important. It was important, Steven said. What are you going to do with it? The teenager looked down at his phone. I don't know. Post it, I guess. It'll probably go viral. Probably, Steven agreed. So think about what you caption it. Think about what message you want people to take away. The kid looked up. What message do you want them to take away? Steven thought about that everyone deserves to be treated like a human being first. Before assumptions. Before judgments. Before fear. He paused. And that if you see something wrong, you don't have to fight. You don't have to yell. Sometimes you just have to ask the right questions. The teenager nodded slowly. I can do that. Good. The kid stood up, then hesitated. Mr. Seagal, thank you for handling that the way you did. Steven just nodded. As the teenager walked away, Steven looked around the diner one more time. People were talking now, not whispering, actually talking, processing, thinking. Outside, the patrol car finally started. The officers pulled out of the parking lot slowly, heading back onto the highway. Steven watched them go. Then he picked up his fork and finished his cold eggs. The diner gradually returned to normal. Conversations shifted to other topics. Forks clinked against plates again. The coffee machine hissed. But something had changed. Something small but significant, and everyone in that diner felt it. By the time Steven paid his bill and walked out to his car, the videos were already spreading. The teenager posted first. His caption was simple. Cops stopped a man for eating breakfast. Then they saw his ID. Watch what he taught them. Within 10 minutes, 50 shares. Within 20, 500. By the time Steven's car disappeared down the highway, the video had 15,000 views. The woman in scrubs posted hers next. She'd kept her promise. Her video showed the confrontation, but it also showed the conversations after. The truck driver approaching. The elderly couple apologizing. Steven's calm responses. Her caption read, "This is what accountability looks like. This is what grace looks like. Share this." The comments came flooding in. He could have destroyed them. Instead, he educated them. This is how you handle power. With restraint. Notice how he didn't raise his voice once. Those cops are lucky it was him and not someone who'd fight back. More videos surfaced. Different angles. Different perspectives. The man near the restroom had caught the officers' faces when they read the ID. The frozen moment of realization. That clip alone got shared 20,000 times in an hour. By evening, news outlets had picked it up. Local stations first, then regional, then national. The headlines varied. Action star, Steven Seagal, stopped by police at roadside diner. Viral video shows officers confronting Steven Seagal without cause. Seagal uses encounter to teach lesson. On profiling. The police department's phone started ringing. Not just local calls, people from across the country. Some angry, some supportive, most demanding an explanation. The department's public information officer scrambled to draft a statement. It went through 3 revisions before the chief approved. It was released at 7 p.m. Earlier today, 2 of our officers conducted a stop at a local establishment. Upon review of the incident, we have determined that the stop lacked sufficient probable cause. We are using this as a training opportunity to reinforce proper protocols and community relations. We are committed to serving all members of our community with fairness and respect. No names mentioned, no specific details, just acknowledgement. My comments under that statement were less forgiving. Training opportunity? How many training opportunities have you had? What happens to the people who don't have a famous name? This is exactly why people don't trust police. But there were other voices too. At least they admitted it. Accountability is a start. Let's see if anything actually changes. Inside the police station, the two officers sat in the chief's office. The door was closed. The conversation was not pleasant. The older officer stared at his hands. The younger one sat rigid, jaw tight. "Tell me what you were thinking," the chief said. His voice was controlled, but the anger underneath was clear. The older officer spoke first. "We saw someone who looked out of place." "Out of place how?" Silence. "That's what I thought," the chief said. "You profiled him, pure and simple, and now it's on video for the whole world to see." The younger officer tried to defend it. "Sir, we were following our instincts." "Your instincts were wrong," the chief interrupted. "And worse than that, they were biased. Do you understand what you've done? You didn't just embarrass yourselves. You embarrassed this entire department." Both officers looked down. "You're both suspended pending a full review," the chief continued. "And you'll be attending mandatory retraining on bias and proper cause for stops. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," they said in unison. "And one more thing," the chief added. "You're lucky Mr. Seagal chose to handle this with grace. Because if he'd wanted to press charges, if he'd wanted to make this a federal case, you'd be done. Remember that." The officers nodded. Dismissed. They stood and left the office. In the hallway, neither spoke. They walked to their lockers, changed out of their uniforms, and left through the back exit. Outside, the older officer finally broke the silence. "We messed up." The younger officer didn't argue. They got in their separate cars and drove home, knowing tomorrow the entire department would be talking about them, knowing the entire country already was. Meanwhile, the videos kept spreading. By midnight, combined views reached 2 million. Steven Seagal never commented, never posted, never gave an interview. He didn't need to. The moment had spoken for itself. 3 days later, the video had been viewed over 10 million times. It had been shared on every platform, discussed on talk shows, analyzed in think pieces, and debated in comment sections across the internet. But the real impact wasn't happening online. In a high school in Ohio, a teacher played the video in her civics class. Afterward, she asked her students a simple question: "What would you have done?" The room went quiet. Then one student raised his hand. "I would have wanted to say something, but I probably would have been too scared." Another student nodded. "Same. I would have just recorded it." "Why?" the teacher asked. "Because they're cops," a girl in the back said. "What are we supposed to do against cops?" The teacher let that sit for a moment, then she said, "You don't have to fight them, but you can bear witness, you can ask questions, you can document." That teenager in the video, he didn't confront the officers. He just made sure the truth was recorded. The students thought about that. "Sometimes," the teacher continued, "the most powerful thing you can do is pay attention and refuse to look away." In a police training academy across the country, an instructor showed the same video to a room full of recruits. "Watch this carefully," he said. "Tell me what went wrong." The recruits watched in silence. When it ended, one raised her hand. "They had no probable cause," she said. "Correct. What else?" "They made assumptions based on appearance," another recruit offered. "Also correct." "And what happened because of those assumptions?" A recruit in the front row spoke up. "They humiliated themselves, and the department, and they gave people another reason not to trust us." The instructor nodded. "Exactly. Every interaction you have is a chance to build trust or destroy it. Choose carefully." In living rooms and break rooms and coffee shops, people had conversations they'd been avoiding for years. A father sat down with his son, a college student, who'd been stopped by police twice in the past year for looking suspicious. "I watched that video," the father said. "The one with Steven Seagal." His son nodded. "Everyone's seen it. I want you to know, I believe you now, about what you told." Me, about how it feels. The son's eyes welled up. It took a celebrity for you to believe me? The father shook his head. No. It took seeing it happen to someone I couldn't make excuses for, someone who clearly did nothing wrong. And I'm sorry it took that long. They sat together in silence. Then they talked, really talked, for the first time in months. In the original diner, business had picked up. People came from miles away, hoping to sit in the same booth Steven had sat in. The waitress told the story dozens of times a day, but she always ended it the same way. He wasn't angry, he wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. He just wanted them to think. That's what stayed with me. The elderly couple, Harold and his wife, had started volunteering with a local civil rights organization. They attended community forums. They listened to stories from people who'd been profiled. We wasted too many years being silent, Harold told a reporter who interviewed them. We're not being silent anymore. The truck driver changed too. He started speaking up when he saw something wrong. Small things at first, then bigger ones. He'd think about that moment in the diner and remember how silence had felt. If you saw someone being questioned just for sitting quietly, would you speak up or stay silent? The two officers completed their retraining. They returned to duty with a different perspective. The older officer requested to work in community outreach. The younger one started mentoring at-risk youth. They never spoke publicly about what happened, but people who worked with them noticed the change. One evening, weeks after the incident, the older officer was having dinner with his family. His teenage daughter was scrolling through her phone. "Dad," she said, "isn't this near where you work?" She showed him the video. His video. He'd avoided watching it until now. He watched himself demand ID, watched himself realize his mistake, watched Steven handle it with more grace than he deserved. His daughter looked at him. "That's you, isn't it?" He nodded slowly. "What happened after?" "I learned something," he said quietly. "Something I should have learned a long time ago." She waited. That the badge doesn't make me right, it makes me responsible. Across the country in a quiet home, Steven Seagal sat with his daughter. She'd seen the videos, read the comments, watched the impact ripple outward. "You could have made them look worse," she said. Steven shook his head. That wasn't the goal. What was? He thought about it. To make people think. To make them uncomfortable enough to change. She smiled. "I think it worked." He looked out the window. "Maybe. We'll see." The videos continued to circulate. The conversations continued. Some people changed, some didn't. But enough did, and that made all the difference. If you believe everyone deserves respect before their ID is checked, type respect in the comments and share this story so others remember that dignity comes first.